Hans Rosling was more than just a statistician. He was a visionary who shattered illusions with data and inspired the world to think differently. In a world full of doubt and limitations, Rosling believed in the power of human potential. He showed us that what seems impossible is often just misunderstood, that progress is not only possible, but inevitable when we apply reason, creativity, and determination. This speech is a reminder you can do anything. There are no limits except the ones you accept. Nothing is impossible, not when you truly use the most powerful tool you have, your brain. Your brain is your greatest asset. Use it to challenge assumptions and unlock new possibilities. This simple truth holds more weight than most people realize. From the moment we are born, our minds begin absorbing, interpreting, and organizing information about the world. We are conditioned by culture, society, family, and education systems. Slowly, layers of assumptions are built around us, some helpful, many limiting. These assumptions shape how we see the world, what we believe is possible, and how we act. But what if we begin to question them? What if we stopped accepting things at face value and used our brain to see beyond the surface? That is exactly what Hans Rosling emphasized throughout his life. He showed the world that when we use data, critical thinking, and an open mind, we can uncover a reality far more hopeful and full of potential than we thought. Most people are stuck not because of a lack of intelligence, but because of a failure to think independently. They follow outdated ideas, cling to fears, and rely on false narratives. But the human brain is not a machine designed to obey. It is a tool for exploration, analysis, and breakthrough. When we begin to use our brain actively rather than passively, a shift occurs. Suddenly, what seemed impossible looks achievable. Problems begin to look like puzzles, and obstacles begin to look like opportunities. You don't need to be a genius or a scientist to challenge assumptions. You only need curiosity, courage, and commitment to the truth. Hans Rosling didn't just talk about facts, he used them to destroy myths that had held humanity back for decades. He encouraged people to think for themselves, to analyze patterns, to look at trends, and to stop relying on outdated mental models. Every major innovation, every revolutionary idea, every leap forward began with someone questioning the norm. Someone used their brain not just to remember information, but to reinterpret it. They asked, why not? Or what if? That is where possibility is born, not in blind belief, but in intelligent curiosity. Schools often train us to memorize, but the world rewards those who can think differently. That's the lesson hidden behind every success story. Someone dared to think. The brain is not just an organ, it's the command center of your destiny. It holds not only memory, but also imagination, reasoning, and the power to visualize things that have never existed. When you stop feeding your brain with doubts and start feeding it with vision, logic, and purpose, it becomes a force of nature. One of the most powerful ways to challenge assumptions is by learning how to look at data, patterns, and real evidence, something Hans Rosling was passionate about. He didn't settle for popular beliefs. He dug into numbers, stories, and long-term trends. And when he did, he found that the world was not getting worse, but better. He revealed how ignorance leads to fear and how clarity leads to progress. In the same way, each person has the responsibility to use their brain not just to survive, but to thrive. It is easy to sit back and say something is impossible. It is harder and more rewarding to ask, what would make it possible? That's when the brain lights up. That's when creativity kicks in. That's when the mind moves from doubt to discovery. Your ability to challenge assumptions depends on how much you are willing to observe without bias, to step back and ask, is this really true? Or have I just been told it's true? When you start doing that, You become free. You stop living in the shadows of old beliefs and start stepping into your own mental clarity. You stop accepting failure as permanent and start seeing it as a clue. You stop waiting for someone to show you the path and begin to build your own. The brain doesn't just solve problems, it creates paths forward. And once you begin to trust that ability, doors begin to open. You start seeing opportunities where others see dead ends. You start finding solutions no one else is looking for. All because you dared to think differently. The world is constantly changing, and those who thrive are not the strongest or the richest, but those who can adapt, innovate, and rethink. Your brain gives you that ability. It is your inner compass, your laboratory, your engine. It can tear down illusions and build new visions, but only if you use it, only if you nurture it, only if you believe in its power more than you believe in your fears. There is no rule that says you have to follow the crowd. There is no law that says you can't be the exception. When you use your brain to challenge what you've been told, you stop being a victim of circumstances and start becoming the author of your future. Progress begins when you stop believing in limits and start asking the right questions. Too often, people live within boundaries they never chose, boundaries handed down by society, family, tradition, or past failures. These limits are not physical but mental. They exist in the form of beliefs like "I can't," "that's not for people like me," or "it's always been this way." But history has shown us that progress happens when someone refuses to accept those limits as truth. Hans Rosling exemplified this mindset. He didn't take the world's assumptions at face value. Instead, he asked questions that others ignored, questions that exposed false beliefs and revealed untapped potential. This is the beginning of progress, not in following what's always been done, but in stepping back, thinking critically, and daring to ask, what if we're wrong? Most people wait for progress to come from outside forces, a new government, a better job, a lucky break, but real change starts from within. The moment you begin questioning the status quo, you ignite a spark that leads to growth. That spark is curiosity. It's the refusal to settle. It's the decision to explore instead of assume. When you ask better questions, you get better answers. Instead of asking, "Why is life unfair?" you ask, "What can I do about it?" Instead of saying, "That's impossible." You ask, "What needs to happen to make it possible?" That shift in mindset is what separates those who advance from those who stay stuck. Hans Rosling believed that the biggest barrier to progress was not ignorance, but the illusion of knowledge. People think they know how the world works, but much of what they believe is based on outdated ideas, incomplete information, or fear-driven assumptions. When you start asking the right questions, you challenge those illusions. You begin to see that the world is far more dynamic, open, and full of opportunity than you were led to believe. You realize that most limitations are not walls, they're doors that haven't been opened because no one bothered to try. Questions are the keys that unlock those doors. They force the mind to stretch beyond its comfort zone, to look at problems from different angles, and to discover new paths. Every breakthrough begins with a question. Every invention, every movement, every step forward was sparked by someone who refused to accept things as they were. Progress isn't about doing more of the same, it's about doing something different, something smarter. But to do that, you must first challenge your beliefs. You must become aware of the mental scripts you're living by and ask whether they still serve you. You must stop saying, "That's just how life is," and start saying, "How can I make life better?" Brain is designed not just to survive but to innovate. But innovation only happens when you're willing to disrupt your current way of thinking. One of the greatest gifts Hans Rosling gave the world was the realization that data and reality often tell a much more hopeful story than the media or our assumptions suggest. He showed that when people ask honest, informed questions about global poverty, education, health, and development, the answers often reveal astonishing progress. The same applies in personal growth. When you stop focusing on what you think is wrong and start asking what's possible, you begin to see options that were hidden in plain sight. You stop reacting to life and start designing it. You stop playing small and start playing smart. The questions you ask determine the quality of your thinking. If you ask questions that limit you, like, "Why can't I ever succeed?" your brain will find answers that confirm failure. But if you ask, "What small action can I take today to move forward?" your brain will begin generating solutions. That's how you escape limitation, by steering your focus toward possibility. The more you train yourself to ask empowering questions, the more you will reshape your mindset. It becomes a habit. You begin to think like a problem solver, a creator, a learner. You become someone who doesn't wait for change but initiates it. Progress is not a product of luck or talent. It is the result of persistent inquiry and action. The world you experience is shaped by the questions you dare to ask. When you become curious about your own thoughts, your habits, your assumptions, and the systems around you, you begin to find leverage points. You start seeing how small changes can create big results. You notice how one new idea, one conversation, or one shift in approach can lead to transformation. That's not magic. That's the brain doing what it does best: adapting, evolving, and creating. The reason most people don't experience growth is not because they're incapable, but because they've stopped asking the kinds of questions that lead to growth. They've accepted the script written for them instead of writing their own. But that can change the moment you choose to look beyond the surface, to dig deeper, and to question what you think you know. In that moment, progress begins, not because you've found all the answers, but because you've learned to ask better questions. The impossible becomes achievable when you combine logic, courage, and persistence. Many people look at their goals and dreams through the lens of fear or doubt. They believe something is impossible simply because they can't see a clear path forward. But that belief is rarely based on reality. It's based on emotion, past experiences, and the influence of other people's limitations. The truth is, what seems impossible often just hasn't been done by someone in your position yet, or it hasn't been approached with the right mindset. That's where logic comes in. Logic helps you break down what looks overwhelming into smaller, solvable parts. It turns big problems into a series of small steps. It allows you to stop reacting emotionally and start thinking strategically. It is the foundation of problem solving, and it opens doors that fear keeps shut. Hans Rosling demonstrated this principle throughout his career. He used logic and data to challenge some of the world's most accepted myths. Where others saw chaos, he saw patterns. Where others gave up, he looked deeper. He didn't approach problems with panic, he approached them with purpose. And that's the mindset you need if you want to turn the impossible into reality. Logic gives you clarity, it gives you direction, but logic alone is not enough. You need courage to act on what you see, especially when others don't believe in your vision. Courage is what allows you to take the first step when the outcome isn't guaranteed. It's what helps you speak up, take risks, and pursue goals that scare you. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the decision that something else matters more than fear. When you decide that growth, truth, or progress is more important than staying comfortable, you unlock a kind of strength that most people never access. You stop waiting for ideal conditions and start creating momentum with what you have. You stop asking for permission and start taking responsibility. That's where progress lives, in the space between fear and action. Most people stop at the edge of fear, but courage carries you forward. Even when you fail, Courage turns failure into fuel. It teaches you lessons and gives you resilience. But courage is not a one-time event, it must be practiced daily. Persistence is the third and most powerful component of this formula. Logic gives you the plan, courage gives you the action, but persistence gives you the staying power. It's what keeps you moving when things don't go as expected. It's what helps you adjust, adapt, and try again. Every great achievement in history was the result of relentless persistence. People who changed the world didn't do it in a single moment, they did it over time, through repetition, through setbacks, and through unwavering focus. Persistence means showing up even when you feel stuck. It means continuing to believe even when others stop. It means staying committed to the process, not just the outcome. When you combine logic, courage, and persistence, you become unstoppable. Logic keeps your vision grounded and achievable. Courage helps you take bold action. Persistence ensures you stay on the path until results begin to show. Most people only use one or two of these qualities. They may have courage, but no plan, or a great plan, but no consistency, or they give up at the first sign of difficulty. But when all three are working together, something powerful happens. You stop being controlled by doubt. You stop reacting to obstacles as if they're the end. You start seeing every challenge as part of the process. Hans Rosling believed in human progress not because he was an optimist, but because he saw what was possible when people used their minds fully. He believed that logic could fight ignorance, that data could battle fear, and that persistence could transform entire systems. His life was a testament to the fact that real change doesn't come from magic, thinking it comes from intelligent action. It comes from staying in the game longer than most people are willing to. It comes from trusting the process even when the result seems far away. Impossible is just a label we put on things we don't yet understand. But when you start thinking like a problem solver, when you face fear with courage, and when you commit to the path no matter how long it takes, you begin to redefine what is possible. The mind is capable of extraordinary things, but only when it's paired with a strong heart and relentless effort. Every goal, no matter how big, becomes reachable when broken down with logic, approached with courage, and pursued with persistence. The world rewards those who don't stop at inspiration, but move forward with intention, intelligence, and grit. Knowledge is power, but applied knowledge is transformation. Many people spend their lives gathering information, reading books, attending lectures, and watching videos, but never truly change. They accumulate knowledge like collectors, proud of what they know, yet stuck in the same patterns. The truth is, knowing something isn't enough. What you do with what you know is what matters. Knowledge that sits unused is just potential energy. It doesn't move anything. Transformation happens when you take what you've learned and apply it to real situations, real problems, and real goals. Hans Rosling was a master of applying knowledge. He didn't just present facts and statistics to impress audiences. He used them to challenge global narratives, change people's minds, and inspire action. He believed in evidence, but more importantly, he believed in turning evidence into insight and insight into impact. Applied knowledge means taking ideas out of the abstract and putting them into practice. It's one thing to understand how something works, and another to use that understanding to make things better. You can read all the books on fitness, mindset, business, or success, but unless you take action, your life won't change. That's the difference between intellectualism and wisdom. Intellectualism is knowing a lot. Wisdom is using what you know effectively. People often get caught in the trap of endless learning, thinking the next piece of information will finally unlock everything. But real growth happens when you take the risk of acting on what you already know. That's when the learning becomes real, when the lessons take root, and when results start to show. Hans Rosling demonstrated this principle by applying his medical knowledge and statistical insight to solve real-world health crises. He didn't just study data to write papers, he used it to make life, saving decisions in some of the world's most challenging environments. He knew that data, when applied correctly, could save lives, improve systems, and shape policies. In the same way, every individual has access to knowledge that can transform their life if they choose to act on it. Applied knowledge can change your finances, your relationships, your health, and your future. It can turn ideas into businesses, problems into solutions, and dreams into reality. But it only works if you're willing to act. Many people avoid taking action because of fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of doing it wrong. But action is the only way to refine knowledge. Until you use what you've learned, you don't truly understand it. Application reveals the gaps in your knowledge. It shows you what works and what doesn't. It gives you feedback, which is more valuable than theory. The person who applies knowledge even imperfectly will always move further than the one who waits for perfect understanding. Transformation requires motion. It requires doing. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to start. Every step forward builds clarity and confidence. Applied knowledge also creates momentum. When you act on what you know, you build habits. You create results, however small, and those results give you motivation to keep going. Over time, small actions compound into big changes. That's the secret most successful people understand. They don't know everything, they simply use what they know better than others. They turn insights into systems, lessons into leverage, and strategies into success. They don't let knowledge sit idle in their minds. They make it work for them. That's how transformation happens, not in the classroom, not in theory, but in life, through action, iteration, and commitment. The world is full of talented people who never reach their potential because they never move from learning to doing. They hide behind preparation, waiting for the perfect moment, but transformation doesn't wait. It comes to those who take imperfect steps with courage and consistency. Hans Rosling didn't wait for the perfect moment to speak truth to power. He used what he had where he was and made a difference. You have access to more knowledge than any previous generation in history, but that knowledge means nothing if it stays locked inside your head. It needs to be activated, tested, lived. Applied knowledge also changes how you see yourself. When you begin to act on what you know, you stop being just a student and start becoming a creator. You stop being passive and become powerful. You start to believe in your ability to shape outcomes, not just understand them. That shift in identity is the real transformation. It's no longer about how much you know, but about who you are becoming through action. You gain self-respect because you're not just talking, you're doing. You gain momentum because each action leads to new understanding. And you gain influence because people trust those who live what they know. Hans Rosling's impact wasn't just in what he said, it was in how he applied his ideas to make the world better. That is the essence of transformation, taking knowledge and using it to elevate your reality and the reality of others.